Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Cory longenecker. Hopefully I'm not butchering that too much, probably am. From Dungeons and Diapers, which is a blog that you started recently, I take it. As Actually, I'll let you tell us, why you started blogging and your intent behind that.
Yeah, so I have a 16-week old first kid, and started this blog because I wanted something to try to get the craziness that was going on in my life, the things that were happening at 3 in the morning, the crazy changes, just to get it out. It kind of transitioned from the day to day to a fictionalized D&D campaign. So I took what my son and I do on a day-to-day basis, and I've tried to fictionalize it a little bit and add a little bit of magical realism so that it's not as boring as oh, we went to the park.
So how's your son at taking on goblins?
Well, he's a bard, so he's pretty good at charming people. He's got like he's got 20. We built a character sheet for him actually, and yeah, he's not very dexterous, but yeah, he can sing him to death.
What alignment would you give him?
Right now, probably like chaotic neutral.
That's what I was thinking, just because I think all kids are like, they're either chaotic neutral or neutral evil. Depending on the child, they can vary a bit, but straight out of the box, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, he could go. I mean, he flirts with both sides, right? So.
Yeah. So is that scratching the itch for you, blogging and kind of fictionalizing?
Yeah, that started it, and that actually kind of moved into other things. So what ended up happening is, we were gaming like 2-3 times a month, almost every week, at least once a week with a regular group I have. And as soon as he was born, that all went out the window. Priorities being home and helping. My wife works full time, and I actually chose to quit my job and stay at home. So I have to kind of be there while she's waiting to get back and timing and stuff like that. And it just, gaming kind of went out. So I wanted to stay connected. And it started with the blog because I could do it at, weird hours in the morning. And now that he's started to get into a pattern, that's kind of changed. So I've even shifted that to where I'm doing that, but now I'm going out and I'm grabbing minis, and I'm doing like a photography type project where I go out and I set up minis when we're on our walks, and I set them out in nature and try to make it look like it was actually part of the thing. It's called forced perspective. So I do that. So when we walk out, if I have 5 minutes and I can set that up, I do that. I write when I write. I try to find ways to stay connected in. I'm on Twitter and I drop like DM tips for learn from parenting, because they're kind of the same thing. As a DM, you're kind of a parent, and some of the things hold true both ways. So I'm just trying to find ways when I have 5 minutes, when I have 10 minutes, that I can stay connected and interject some creativity.
You're even talking about your gaming group with, you said the GM has twins.
That's right.
So like you guys are gaming, throwing dice, passing babies.
Yep, that's happened plenty of times. His wife, she works shifts, so she's on like 12 days a month and off 12 days. Or it's not straight, but it's she might be off 2 days and on 2 days. So when she's not watching him and we want to play and we can coordinate everybody, because it's like herding cats too. Yeah, so we'll play with babies if we have to.
Yeah, there's a lot of shift work that's kind of like that, where it's like 3 on, 3 off. I've known quite a few people. Yeah, it's just a matter of like figuring things out. Like I used to work at a gym and I'd work these split shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like work in the morning, go home, grab the kids, and then I go back at night and like meet up with the wife at the park with the kids, and like we'd hang out for a little while. Maybe we'd grab something to eat at the park, and then like we'd play handoff with them.
Yeah.
So everyone just has to like kind of find out, figure out what works for them. Now I've been kind of lucky in the sense that like my wife isn't really a gamer, so a lot of times on the weekends I would still have my Saturday nights to play D&D.
Yep.
And she would man the children.
And that's kind of the situation I've been in. We tend to try to game on Friday or Saturday night, and try to start somewhere around 5 o'clock, so that we aren't going super late. But yeah, like the last time we played, it's the first time I played in person since he was born. I'd Skyped in a couple of times just because if she needed help or something, I was here to help. But yeah, I go in person. We play for like 6 hours. I get home at like 11:30. And inevitably, he'd been sleeping basically from like 7:30 p.m. till about 4 in the morning. Well, he decided that night to completely change and be up every hour. So normally I'm going to bed at like 9 o'clock. I get home, I'm 2.5 hours of missed sleep. And then he starts every hour, boom, he's up. 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. I wake up the next morning, I'm just a wreck.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes you're just like, where's the Goblin King at? Can you just come take him? Maybe for a couple of days.
And I mean, and I'm blessed too, because, next door, my mom and my grandmother moved in next door as soon as they heard that we were having a kid. My grandmother moved down from Toledo, Ohio, and she's 91, and she didn't want to go to a nursing home. So my mom was like, here, come live with me. And that's been a blessing, because if I need, like, I'm going out of my mind crazy, I can walk over and deposit him and just give me 15 minutes, please.
Fraginator, what's a blogger? Someone that writes on a blog? Or a website?
Yeah.
So are you starting to accumulate embarrassing dad moments yet?
Well, I mean, there's obviously the one where you get urinated on. You're going to change the diaper, and then all of a sudden that stream comes up and pops you right in the face.
Yeah, that's when you learn. You keep that sucker covered.
Yep. Yeah, so the diaper switch. So the one's coming out and the one's coming over. Yeah. That was learned quick. The blowout in the most inopportune place. That's been pretty bad. I've had just his poop all over my pants. It just blows out. I'm in the middle of somewhere, and men's bathrooms don't typically have changing stations. So
yeah,
I'm either trying to make do on like the sink, which people are giving me really bad looks, like, why are you changing a dirty diaper on this bathroom sink?
This filthy sink.
Right. Or I'm knocking on the women's room, like, hello, I need to change my baby. I swear I'm not a pervert.
Yeah. I have biological evidence, right? Sort of. Or some kid I just shanghaied, one or the other.
So it's stuff like that. Luckily, there hasn't been anything. I haven't dropped him, thank God. Nothing terrible like that.
But... Oh yeah, you got to wait like another year or two, then they can take a drop. Not saying I've dropped my kids or anything, but.
But yeah, that's probably the poop all over me, kind of in the middle of the like I was walking him around the mall trying to get him to go to sleep because I needed some place to take him, and it was raining and I couldn't take him to the park. So yeah, it's like
my best one, and my mother-in-law and wife like to break my balls about to this day, was the first time they left me alone with the baby. And they ran out to do something, and they weren't gone very long. But he needed his diaper changed, so I was going to change his diapers. I mean, I used to actually change my little brother's diapers anyway, so it wasn't really a big deal. Except for I hadn't changed diapers in 15 years or so. They didn't make them the same way. When I used to change diapers, it was tape.
Okay.
And now it's like a Velcro.
Yep.
And I'm like, these diapers are all broken. Diapers like everywhere. So I'm like going through the diapers looking for a diaper that's not defective. And apparently the problem was I was defective. And I was like really upset. I was freaking out. Like, and then I was like, you're never leaving again. We worked it out eventually.
And we were blessed in that, before I quit my job, I got 6 weeks of parental leave, and my wife got 8 weeks with her job. So we had a nice period where the two of us were able to kind of learn and do things together before she went back to work, and I had him full time. But yeah, that first day with him by myself for the whole day was kind of, you're sitting there waiting for her to leave, and you're like, okay, it's real now. This is all on me. And in the time since, it's become second nature. I throw him and we go wherever, whenever, and it's no big deal. But the learning curve was pretty steep, and now it's kind of tapered off.
Yeah, once you kind of get it. So I also when they were little too, I kind of had it easy in the sense that I drove for a living. So I never got up with the kids. My wife always did, because she didn't want me staying up all night with kids and then getting behind the wheel of a truck. The next day.
Yeah, and we had to work that too, because with her going back to work, we had to figure out some sort of shift for the two of us. So she would throw in the earplugs from like 9 p.m. until 1:30 in the morning, or I take that back. I would throw in the earplugs from 9 to like 1:30 in the morning, and I'd get at least my 4.5 hours of sleep. And she'd be up and taking care of him, and then we'd flip so that she could sleep before she had to get ready to go to work. But yeah, it's a juggling act. It's just a crazy juggling act.
So what can people expect over on your blog, like from Fictionalized? Do you have like a sample or an example you want to go to?
Yeah. So let me look at that real quick. One of the funny things is we're out hiking, and I had him in a carrier. We've got the carriers that you can put on and strap them in, and most people, especially men, aren't used to seeing other men with it. When you see it, I'm at the grocery store and a woman sees it, and she kind of smiles and then laughs and chuckles to herself, and has that motherly look to her, like, I see what you're doing there. But men aren't quite used to it. So I'm hiking around, and I'm trying to get out there, and I'm having a good time. And I come across a couple of people, and they're kind of bigger, burlier guys, probably like former military or active military, something like that. And they're trucking through, and they've got their backpacks on. It looks like they're like training maybe for like a Tough Mudder or something. And they kind of look at me like, what the heck's he doing? So I went and I turned that into a conversation, or a story, basically, that we were out and we came across these guys who were coming down the mountain, and they had fought some beasts, and I kind of threw that into the blog. I took a picture with some minis, and it was three, it was like a couple dwarves and like a northerner barbarian. And it was them kind of talking about how they fought something, and me making up kind of a story of the rest of it. And so it's kind of stuff like that. It's just fictionalized. It's storytelling. It's like if I grew up reading the Dragonlance novels and the Drizzt novels and stuff like that. So I'm trying to throw some of that fantasy writing back into it, because it's something I love. And yeah.
You didn't turn them into ogres or orcs?
No, I typically keep the people I meet as people, and then I make up the story of what they encountered, or stuff like that. The other thing I did was another one. I was walking and listening to a couple police officers talking about some perp that they stopped, and I turned that into a story about I couldn't follow them the whole time, because I didn't want to be like, well, I'm following a bunch of cops, because that's probably not going to go over real well.
Yeah, you'll end up on a watch list. You write long enough anyway, you're going to be on some kind of list.
So I made up a story based on what I heard in that period of time, and then I made up the rest. Like, if I was using my imagination as this character, here's what it would be.
Yeah. Now, so your mileage may vary, and this is just my experience. You're talking about being out at the grocery store and encountering women when you have the baby. I find women really like that, and when I would work as a trainer in a gym, I would talk with my clients, and like one of them, I was like, oh yeah, and I was bathing the baby or whatever. And she's like, you bathe the baby? I'm like, well, yeah, he needs to get clean, or stupid things like, oh, because I have this schedule, I'll start dinner on this time because I'm home. And they're like, you do that? I'm like, wow, you got a really shitty husband. And I'm like, and I really don't do that much. So like, I'm like, whatever he's doing is making me look better. That's all right.
And it's funny because I was actually just talking about that with my wife yesterday. I was out at the grocery store. I took my grandmother just moved here. She doesn't drive anymore. She's 91. So I took her to the grocery store with me. So it's me, the baby, and my grandmother. And, you know, women are kind of looking at me like, what's this guy doing? And they're all smiling and happy. They're like, he's got his grandma, his baby, you know, like, and I think to myself, you know, women do this every day, and they aren't getting pats on the back, you know, from random people. It's almost expected of them. So it's kind of funny that, you know, they see a dad doing it, and it's just because it's not very common. But there's kind of a weird, you know, double standard there where it's you know, the pat on the back for the dad, but it's expected of the mom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean. Like when you see, you know, when I hear these stories where people are kind of congratulating for doing something that's kind of routine, it's like, well, we both made the kid, so I should probably do something.
Yeah, and you know, change it. I can change diapers in a moving, you know, well, not in a moving car, but if I had to, I probably could. In a parked car, I've done it. You know, sitting on my lap with the diaper, just boom, 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 nothing on me. I've gotten expert at that. So yeah, it's you learn what you need to do, and you do it.
Hey, you know, I remember as a kid, my grandfather would pick us up on the weekends and bring us up towards our way to hang out. And my youngest brother's like 8 years younger than me, and I remember him pulling over the side of the road and changing diapers, you know, in his station wagon. And he's like the manliest guy I know. He was like, he's a World War II vet. You know, he was an engineer on the railroad for 40 years. 20 of that was as a fireman. And what a fireman does back then was they shoveled coal for, you know, the whole time they worked. So I was like, wow, it's a heck of a way to make a living.
And for that generation, for him to be like that, it was the exception too. That definitely was not the norm.
So I don't know. So like, you know, he was like a great role model for me, and I saw that growing up. You know, very, very kind and compassionate. Mm-hmm. So you said you're still getting some D&D in, but you know, as a player, you don't have time for running.
Yeah.
You might want to check out some Sly Flourish then.
Yeah, actually, I'm when I can watch and read, I get on and I check out whoever I can and find out stuff. And I'm familiar with the name. I've heard him. I see him on Twitter. So yeah.
Yeah, his whole thing is lazy dungeon mastering, and
yeah.
It's not so much lazy. It's just like knowing what things to work on.
Yeah.
Because I used to like write like I was writing an adventure or a module, and it's like I found after doing this for so long, it is the biggest waste of your time.
Yep.
You just have so much stuff you're never going to use.
And that's exactly and that's kind of where the dungeon master tips learned from parenting comes from, because I immediately saw that. You know, I'd plan everything for my day with my kid. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring that. And like 5 minutes into the car ride, all out the window, completely gone. Adapting on the fly, doing, you know, everything that I wanted to do. I didn't go here, but I went here. And it's kind of like that. Your players are going to take you in a completely different direction. And if you're not ready to improvise, you're hosed.
Yeah. I think, you know, for someone who wants to DM and they don't have a lot of time, like the biggest thing to do is have an idea for 1 or 2 encounters in your head. You don't need it written up. You just need to know what's going to be there. And, you know, and you let the players do what they're going to do. And when things start slowing down, or, you know, you need something to happen, break out one of those encounters or blow something up.
Yep. Yeah, I learned very early on that I did the same thing that you did. It was, I'm going to write as if this were a complete, you know, campaign, world building extraordinaire. I've got encounters, you know, 7 layers deep and political stuff, you know, multiple generations long. And then as soon as I started playing the game, I'm like, okay, they're going to buy into this. It's going to be, you know, epic, and they're going to be hooked. And then they completely go in a direction I never anticipated, and all that work was for naught, essentially. So yeah, I'm with you on that. If you can, and it's really not the writing anymore that's hard. It's just coordinating the time to play. It's actual play time or getting together that's the hard part for me.
That, that is always the struggle of every group, and also that's informed our play style too. Like, we used to play every Saturday, and some of our GMs would not run if all the players didn't show up. And we just got to the point where it's like, well, do we want to play the game, or do we all want to constantly be rescheduling? And so we try to run our sessions, and I think for the bulk of them, they were very episodic. So we'd like, okay, here's the home base or town or whatever. This is where the adventure starts. And by the end of the night, our GMs would always try to get back to that spot.
Okay.
So, so that you don't have to worry about it on the next session.
Yep.
But even then, sometimes it comes up, and you can handle it a couple of ways. One is just ignore it, and I find no one really cares. I've been in a session where the one player wasn't going to make the next session, and I knew it, and they were like getting ready to have a fight, and I had planned out what was going to happen to justify the character not being there, and I completely forgot because the players that were there, they just moved into the action so fast that it was like such a non-issue. But I see GMs like agonize over this, right?
Yep.
And you're and the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, you're the only one that actually cared, because everyone else just wants to play the game.
Yep. And the group we play with, we were taking turns where I GM and then my buddy would GM, and we each had our different campaigns, and we had planned actually for them to intersect at some point, so that the players in his campaign, we would become NPCs in mine, and vice versa. And we're still waiting for that day to happen. But yeah, we have a guy who's now he's back in Hong Kong. He got deported back, and he lived here, and half the alphabet organizations recognized him as a citizen, and half of them didn't. So he's on a 12-hour time zone difference. So we Skype him in, and I don't know what it is, but if it's the connection or if it's the Chinese government hijacking the feed and spying on it, which would be funny in and of itself, like listening to that conversation. So we start him on at 7 p.m., which is 7 a.m. his time, and he's listening, and we've got this whole thing going on, and no one cares anymore about if someone goes. Like, if it's an easy out, like I play a paladin, and if she gets called out by her god to go somewhere else to go do something, that's easy to justify that. So, but yeah, in effect, no one cares. People put too much work into trying to come up with some elaborate story for why a player and character can't be there.
No, I'll do it sometimes for fun. Sometimes it just like, if I know before the session, like that might totally be the session. Like, they have to rescue the person, or
oh yeah,
one of the characters they've gotten kidnapped and married. They were making camp, and like she got entangled by vines and stuff, and was drug away. So like, she was being pulled through the forest as the other characters are chasing her, and I've got the veggie pygmies riding her, and shooting bows that the characters are pursuing. So it became like this big chase thing. The one session we ended with, that character decided to go in the woods to go camping, and one of the other ones decided to go with. And I ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm like, this is why I always end in town and don't do things like this. Because the very next session, of course, that player didn't show up. And so I just had I had the Thatch hit her over the head and knock her out, and drag her back to its lair. And the other player is like, oh, I can't handle this by myself. And, had just tracked it for a while just to know where it was going to go. And then the character's unconscious, and the Thatch is dancing with her and holding a wedding. So so they had to figure out how to get their friend back and from this monster that they weren't sure that they could take on. So I do try to have fun with it, but at the same time, it's like I try not to worry about it too much unless it's convenient for me.
And that just gave me a great idea. If someone can't make it, their character's wife is pregnant and they have to go back and help deliver. And then maybe that the baby gets kidnapped and by a cult. And there's an adventure right there.
Oh yeah, like so this like it's funny because the one group that I'm running for, it's all ladies in the game, and it is like the most domestic and family oriented game I've ever been involved with. Like, you know, generally, you know, the like it's like everyone has a tragic backstory, or you know, the family is never talked about at all. But you know, the one main character is married and they have a kid, and she goes out adventuring to make money. You know, another one is married to a pirate captain, so but she was polymorph, so she's out seeking. No, she was reincarnated, and so she's out seeking a polymorph spell to get back to being a gnome like she used to be.
And that's actually really funny because something I did. I was on Twitter in between, you know, sleep sessions, and a guy named Snickle Socks posted a thing saying, you know, what about, wouldn't it be funny if there was a parent barbarian and it was like the path of the parent? I was like, hey, wait a minute, I'm gonna write that. Give me a second. So I went home I went home. I wasn't home, but that night I told my wife, hey, give me like an hour of, you know, time to just work on this. And a couple people had posted some ideas for stuff, and I actually wrote a subclass of barbarian called the path of the parent, and it's based like, you know, as if they were a parent, and the things they'd get, like, you know, at third level, they can choose as like reflexes of the cat, where if a child occupies the same 5-foot space that they do, they get advantage on dex saving throws. Endurance of the antelope, you know, like you run on so little sleep for so long that it just becomes normal, and you can make do with it. So you get like advantage on constitution saving throws, or strength, like you pull from the, you know, middle of nowhere, you're like, oh, I need to move this, I'm exhausted, but you know, here it comes. And so strength saving throws and things like that. And just I redid the exhaustion table to where it wasn't just negatives. So with each negative level, you also got a positive. And I did that with that. I put it up on DM's Guild, and a couple people were commenting like, man, this is this is exactly what it's like being a parent. So
yeah, this guy gets it.
So yeah, I kind of joked with that, and I'm donating anything I raise on it. It's pay what you want, but anything I'm going to donate to charity. So if anybody's out there and wants to look at it, feel free to grab it and run with it. But yeah, something else I'm planning on doing is actually rewriting all the classes with subclasses as a parent base. And so, you know, you'll have the bard. I think I'm writing the bard right now as if he's like a kid's entertainer. So he went to college, the College of Children's Entertainment. So he's like, you know, he went to this college to learn how to entertain kids. So he's not a clown, but
I'm picturing the Wiggles.
Yeah, or like, you know, any of that stuff. Yeah, so, you know, he can play his music, or he's like the Pied Piper. Kids are like drawn to him with his charisma. So I'm taking that stuff and rewriting it. I'm gonna put it all together. I'm actually trying to find artists who are willing to donate some of their time to help draw, because I want to make it look cool.
So are you putting that stuff on the DM's Guild under Dungeons and Diapers?
Yeah, it's either my name, Cory Longenecker, or you can look at D and Diapers. It's up there, either one. You'll find it with either one.
Okay, cool. Just so people know.
Mm-hmm.
DM Don says, so there should be like a stay-at-home dad D&D support group. Well, you know, maybe support stay-at-home parent.
Yeah, I mean, what would be cool would be, you know, most D&D games take place in the evening or at night. Maybe if it's like a weekend, like a day game. But a lot of people have stuff going on that they can't do that. It'd be cool if there was like a stay-at-home parent online, or even in person. That'd be even cooler if you could get a group of people together. It'd pretty much be like one dude and a bunch of women. But if you could find a group of people willing to do that, I would do that. That'd be great. Who needs a parents group? You go play D&D. That's your parents group. Yeah,
instead that would be fun. And you know, I think it's changing a lot now, you know, as far as who ends up staying home with the kids.
Yeah, that's something I looked at before I even when we were deciding should I quit my job and do this, I looked to see what there was out there for men who stayed at home, and there's not a lot. There's some blogs and some forums and stuff like that, but it's not like it is for women. But yeah, like the number of men staying home is gradually increasing. I think it's somewhere around like over 10% right now, maybe 11 or 12%. So, and that number is continuing to rise, which is cool.
I think you might have the lockdown though on the crossover of D&D to stay-at-home dads. That's gotta be a really, really, really small niche.
Yes, I don't think there's probably that many of us out there.
Although I think DM Down in the chat, I think he does. He runs a cool thing in Philadelphia called Drunks and Dragons, and they I think like two nights a month they kind of lock down a local tavern or pub and run games, so they get like a whole section of it and just have people there gaming, eating, and drinking.
And like once my boy's older, I mean he's only 16 weeks, so it's constant attention. But once he's fully sleeping through the night and stuff like that, and more on a schedule with his naps and whatnot, that's going to open up, and some of that stuff will come back. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, it's you're just making do with what time you have, because it's not much.
Nerdarchy Doug says Dave is a stay-at-home dad technically too. I guess so, except for my kids, like they don't want to be around me for the most part. So,
well, you have teenagers, so that's
yeah. Like my daughter at any given time has a go bag ready, so like. It's completely different, For now, they're dependent on you. Then for a while, they really like you. They look up to you. They worship you, and then you get to the phase where they don't want to have anything to do with you.
I mean, I remember that. When I was a teenager, that was early '90s when the internet was first really coming to its height, and the World Wide Web and whatnot. And I was on CompuServe, and I was just locked in my room, not wanting to be around my parents, just on the computer, just what's out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to you. You're uncool. This is way cooler.
So now you're like in that phase where they're real needy. You're like changing diapers, making sure they're fed. Why are they crying? Do they need to be burped? Like all that stuff's going on. Then you get into that phase, right, where it's like, okay, now they're getting more mobile. Like they're still kind of boring too. Like they're like, it's a baby. They don't really do much yet, right? So then you start to get to the phase where they start doing stuff and it gets a little more interesting. Then it gets too interesting because now they can do stuff and try that could possibly kill themselves. So then you're like, all right, what are they going to get into? What are they trying to stick in their mouth, or are they going to try and stick their fingers in electrical sockets? Did I baby proof everything?
Yep. And yeah, it's kind of like it's a leveling process, right? As they level up, you do too as a parent, and it gets more complicated as they get older.
I think quicklings were modeled off of like toddlers.
It's insane. My sister has three kids, and they're 8, 6, and 4 now. But when they were real small, a year, 2 years old, I don't know how she did it. I mean, like they three boys everywhere, fully mobile, and that's just got to be chaotic. I mean, I don't understand. I really don't. Props to my sister, Molly, if you're out there, awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said too, like we were talking beforehand, and like my experience has been, and people I've talked to, is boys start off hard just because they just tend to be more rough and tumble and active and easily distracted. But they get easier, and then girls are the opposite. Like they start off easier and then they get harder. So I wonder what kind of kids programming you're gonna have to deal with. I hope Caillou is gone and done with for your sake. I hated that little kid.
My sister had that, and yeah, I watched it, and I was not a big fan of that.
I was like, you do not take a kid with that little hair and put a baseball cap on him. He looks like a cancer patient. For the love of God. That was just a bad choice.
Yep, and I mean, and it's Canadian too, so it's kind of like, what are you doing here? Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. Barney's gone, thankfully too. Sesame Street still exists, so we have turned on Sesame Street, and he does, and it's the colors and right now it's just colors and patterns. So what is this? but yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like for kids programming by the time he's really ready to kind of consume that.
I, yeah, I had a buddy, and like we got married like within a month of each other, and but I had kids a little bit, a few years before him, and he'd be asking about the baby, like, well, what's it like now? Is it like a hamster or like a dog? How smart are they now? Oh, you should do the fantasy monster humanoid comparison as you go through the stages.
Right? That's actually not a bad idea too. Yeah, at like 0 to 6 months, you're this. 6 to 9, you're this. Yeah.
Yeah. Like definitely.
Challenge.
There's the kobold and goblin phases.
And then something else I was joking about on Twitter the other day. I said, we should redo the challenge rating of D&D to basically be what it takes to clip a baby's nails. The difficulty of clipping a baby's nails is the baseline for your challenge rating, and it just readjust it based on that.
Oh, so Kyle Ellis says, as a Canadian, I liked it because it was a French Canadian show. I don't know if it was originally broadcast in French and maybe it lost something in the translation to English, but man, I did not like that little kid. I mean, and once my son realized I didn't like it, I think that made him like it more. Yeah.
Yeah, and nothing against Canadians. I love Canada. It's just like, yeah, I think it may have been French Canadian and lost in translation. It doesn't quite come across. And there's some weird stuff too. Like I think it's the little giraffe. It's called Sophie. It's actually a French product, and they've built an entire show. I think it's on Amazon Prime. You can watch, and it's an entire show dubbed over from French into English. And it too, you're like, what am I watching? How do kids like this? Like, am I too adult to really get it? I don't understand. It's not really bright colors. They're kind of all dull, muted, and you're like, what is this? How did this make it?
Yeah, you got some good times ahead of you as you watch like the as you watch their personalities come out, and even then, like I can't even remember the specific instances, but I remember watching my kids like in the high chair messing with my wife, and I'm like, oh, no, this is gonna be trouble. I can already see it.
And like something we did on our baby registry was we put on stuff like, okay, what might not be around by the time he's old enough to appreciate it. So we put on like the complete season of the original DuckTales and like Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers and fun stuff.
Like they redid it. There's a new one.
I know, and it's not as cool. The original was awesome, and we registered for stuff like that just so that we didn't like what was out there. So maybe we can preserve the things we liked when we were youths.
Cardboard Fortress says D&D eyes Teletubbies as some sort of Feywild horror dimension.
God, that yeah.
They were pretty weird.
Oh yeah, and like not just the colors, but like the symbols, and then I mean, there's so many ways you can cross over Parenthood with D&D. It's kind of silly actually, that just gives you. I mean, that just gave me an idea there. Like your idea earlier about the going into the monster manual and start hitting phases. There's so many things you can do with it. The crossovers are unbelievable.
I used to make fun of the Wiggles all the time. I'm like, 4 grown men should not be interested in children that much that aren't their own.
Right? And that's kind of like, that was one of the inspirations for like the College of Children's Entertainment. Like it's kind of creepy in a way. Yeah. And it's supposed to be slightly creepy. And it's inspired by, one of my buddies, the one that's in China. He kind of always plays a creepy, kind of slightly creepy off-center character. And you're like, why are you doing this? You're a normal person, I think. So yeah, that was kind of the impetus for that.
Although now, Cardboard Fortress, I kind of do want to do something with the Teletubbies in your Feywild horror dimension.
I mean, that would be terrifying. You could turn Caillou into a really, really horrible villain. So I don't know if you've read it, Elizabeth Moon's the Paxenarian series. There's in later in she has this one group of people. They're all wizards, and they basically kill kids and then move their souls into the kids' bodies. So imagine Caillou as like, a level 15 necromancer that's actually in Caillou's body.
We did a necro druid that as someone wanted us to do. They wanted us to make garden gnome zombies. So we created this garden gnome necro druid that had these minions of ravens that he would send out, and the ravens would wait for children to die. So they would always hang out where children were and collect their spirits and their souls, and then bring them back. And the necro druid would plant them into these plant zombies, and so we made these like they were our garden gnome zombies, but they would make them by harvesting the souls of dead children and put them into this. And then and I think I ran like one of our adventures around Halloween was kind of like that, where it's all very much like Children of the Corn, and they show up and they're like there's this gnome village and there's a celebration, but like none of the kids are around, they don't see them, and then they did the whole kind of like a Children of the Corn thing later on, and it turns out that this like one gnome was just holding the rest of the village hostage.
That's really, really funny. In the campaign my buddy runs, there's an event where the Feywild and the Prime Material Plane start crossing over in places that they shouldn't, in more places than they already do. And that's kind of similar situation. This hag from the Feywild was actually luring kids from the local town over, and they were like Children of the Corn, like kind of glazed over and almost zombie like. Yeah, it was really creepy. It was really creepy because you wanted to kill the kids. You're like, these kids are evil, but they're maybe just possessed. Maybe we shouldn't kill the kids. And you're having this moral debate on killing children. We're like, wow, we're all like parents here. This is messed up.
Yeah, on the Scarlet Sisterhood session games that I run, two of the players are moms with small children. So one of the encounters I did just kind of to freak them out, and because I knew they would be able to handle it, but also because like one of the players has a habit of always trying to befriend the monsters and fix the monsters and talk their way out of stuff, and I do let them do that sometimes because it makes it so much better when I do things like this. And they encountered a wagon that had been attacked and turned over, and there's just these little handprints on it. And then like I had a wraith come out of it, and the wraith was a baby. So it looked like a wraith, but it was a little bit smaller and it had the baby face. And they're trying to figure out what can they do to help this child, but it's a wraith, so it's just going to try and eat their souls.
Right. No, and it's I think now that I am a parent, and we didn't want kids for a very long time, and we were happy and whatnot, and things changed, and we both kind of decided we wanted to become parents. And now that I am a parent, I wouldn't want to go back to that, despite all the craziness that goes on and all of that. I love being a parent, but it opens up from like a player and a DM perspective a whole new world of ways to go out and create stuff and kind of flip things around like you just did, like a little baby wraith. I would never have thought of that had but now that I'm a parent, I'm like, oh man, that's creepy. I could really turn that on its head. And the people that I play with, they're pretty much all parents too, and they'd be like, oh man, that's creepy. Let's mess with that.
Yeah, I've gotten better about incorporating things like that. I still have to work on. I don't incorporate enough female monsters in my games. I don't know. I just always default to the monsters are dudes. But like as I read things, I hear other things, people talk about things, I realize that that's something that I do subconsciously.
That's interesting because I always kind of make my monsters asexual. Like I don't really have. I mean, obviously, like vampires and stuff like that, I tend to have. They tend to be male, but like true monsters. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I guess that part holds true because I really like, unless it's obvious or whatever. Yeah. And the only time, I guess there was the one encounter I I rolled a random encounter, and it ended up being 3 bullets. And the players weren't really ready to eat bullets or fight bullets. One of them was a halfling, so the one bullet was very much interested in the adventuring party, but the other 2 were fighting each other. And like, you know, the first thing that I kind of had them encounter was like these stones with these deep gouge marks and claw marks in them. And so when I rolled multiple bullets as an encounter, I was like, well, what can I do with this? So I ended up making it like a bullet mating ground. And so the 2 males were fighting for dominance in order to mate, and the female was kind of like indifferent, and it was like, oh, something to eat. Yeah, you know, so it kind of worked because they were able to lure off just one of them, fight the one, and keep going.
Yeah.
And although the Vardo ended up with a huge bite mark taken out of it.
So what other stuff have you pulled from being a parent that you can think of off the cuff?
You know, I don't feel like I've pulled a lot from it. I mean, for me, the most interesting thing was eventually being able to have my kids game.
Yeah.
So like, but you're a ways away from that, and you never know. Like, one of them likes it and one of them doesn't. So, and the one that he's been gaming with us for a couple years now, and now he's starting to get disinterested. So on game night, he'd rather play video games with his friends, or you know, try to figure out how to talk to girls that he's afraid to talk to, or whatever. So,
being a teenager again.
Yeah, so gaming is like dropping off his priority list.
Yeah, we've got some friends like that. Their son big into gaming. Now they didn't game, but he's still disinterested in them and as parents. So he'd lock himself in his basement with his friends and they'd game. But even now he's saying that you know, he's about to graduate high school, and now it's kind of they're not even really doing that anymore. It's on to other things, getting ready for college and girls. Of course, it's always girls.
It's always girls, yeah, or boys, as the case may be.
Yeah,
but yeah, and it's different too. Like from when I was a kid gaming to what, you know, kids that are gaming now. Like when I was a kid gaming, it was definitely a specific demographic.
Yep.
So a lot of them didn't have to worry about girls or boys, as the case may be. Anyway, so they stayed gaming a lot longer. But now it's so much more diverse. There's so many more people gaming. It's a lot more socially acceptable. It's a lot more hip than it was.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's completely the case. When I started gaming, it was second ed, and it was a bunch of us nerds in a basement, and that's what we did. You know, Saturday nights, Friday nights, it was us being nerdy in the basement playing Dungeons and Dragons, and when we'd be at school, you know, comparing character sheets and joking around with that, you know, getting stuff thrown at us and made fun of, and you know, and bullied for it, and you know, we just went back to the basement and kept playing. But now it's totally different. It's you know, I think with the internet being out there and streaming and things on Twitch and whatnot, it's just completely changed access to the game and the way it's perceived. It's actually really, really cool.
And my son's he's in like an engineering program in high school, and so he has this session, or they call it period 0, mm-hmm. and like all the kids in that class mess with him. So they all have like screenshots from Nerdarchy stuff as their desktops. And then
that's awesome.
And then every once in a while, be in a class around this time, and one of his friends will turn on one of the live chats.
Oh wow! Okay, there you go.
And then they get yelled at by the teacher.
But something I saw there also on Twitter. It's a guy named Ethan Shinover. He's out in the Seattle area. He's a teacher at I think an all girls school. And he runs a D&D group in school. He wrote an entire curriculum for it. And these girls are hooked. Like, they are completely in it. And it's really neat to see, you know, him do it. And it's not just about, you know, literacy. He's actually integrating math and stuff like that. Like, calculate the volume of this stinking cloud. You know, and he's doing some really cool stuff with that. So it's neat to see it now entering school as part of a curriculum rather than just, you know, kids bringing it there to talk about it.
Even if he is trying to ruin it with math.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has to probably throw that in there to sell it to the administrators at some level.
We had a guy on from Australia, and he works at a youth center, and that basically that's what he does. There's other people running after school programs. The Girl Scouts have a D&D badge now, so yeah. So it's definitely out there in all kinds of places.
And I'm hoping by the time my son's old enough to game at and not just like the kids version of D&D, but like actual what we would consider D&D, kind of the way we play, that it's out there everywhere for him. And if it's not, I'll do what I can to to try to make it that way, because I've gotten so much out of this hobby. And mainly literacy, like reading and writing was really founded. I remember my parents would come into my room at like 3 a.m, and I'm under the covers with a flashlight, reading the Dragonlance novels. And they're like, we don't really want to tell you to stop because you're reading. We don't want to punish you for reading.
But you have to go to bed.
but yeah, you have to go to bed. So, I hope it's that sort of situation where it continues to bring that about in kids.
So, Cardboard Fortress in the chat. Have you ever seen James Stowe's Sidekick Quests? I have not, or tried his game for kids. I haven't, and I think Cory's a few years away from that.
Yeah, probably. What was the name of that? James Quick?
It is James Stowe's Sidekick Quests.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Evil is actually a really good game too. Because it is Cypher system dumbed down a little bit, but not so much. It's actually more, what they've done is it's a very resource resource management intensive system. Okay. Where all your stats essentially equate to hit points, right? That you spend to do things.
Okay.
So in the kids version, you get chits, right? So like as a kid, like you have a pile for each stat, and if you want to do a thing, well, you have to pay for it. And that's something even littler kids that don't really have math skills and reading skills yet, they can still do that because you can see their pile going down.
Yep. I know there's resources out there for that. I just haven't even started looking for them yet, because that's, like you said, it's so far down the road for me that. So yeah, like if anybody has it out there, and part of me wants to try to accumulate what I can now, because I don't know what it's going to be like in the future. So if I can grab those things, yeah, feel free to hit me up, message me if you've got kid-like D&D stuff out there or things like that, because I'll grab what I can while I can.
Yeah, so my son didn't really latch on to RPGs until I tried with D&D a little bit. He just wasn't getting into it. But when we started playing Mutants and Masterminds, and he could play a purple gorilla from space, then he was all about it.
That's what it took to shift him over.
Yeah, and he was like 13 or 14, and his big takeaway from that game was all of his characters going forward had to have perception all the time. Because he kept failing perception checks or not perceiving things.
So he built that one up, yeah. And then what started failing at that point? Did he? There's
going to always be something. Well, the long-standing game that he's played in with us has been my brother-in-law Ted's game, his uncle, and basically he played a druid because all he really wanted to do was turn into an ankylosaurus. So eventually, once he got to the point where he could do that, that was the only problem he could solve, is does it need an ankylosaurus for this?
And did he ever get to the point where he wasn't even asking the question? He's just like, I'm just going to turn into this now.
Yeah, basically. It's like, oh, that's great. You're now wedged in the door jam. So...
I mean, I remember when I first started. I actually remember the very first game I played. It was some buddies. It's when I was living in northern Jersey. I was probably in like 6th or 7th grade, and yeah, one of my buddies is like, yeah, come over. My brother's running the game. They were in high school, and it was like, you can play. And they made me a little ranger, and I had a flame strike sword. And the whole game, I was like, let me use it. Let me use it. I want to use it now. And they're like, don't, no, now is not the time. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when the rest of them were captured by like cultists, and it's just me, and I've got, you know, 2 cultists in front of me, and I've got my sword up, and they tell me to point the sword down, and all my friends will live. Instead of hitting flame strike, I just point the sword down. So I wanted to trigger that thing the whole game, and then finally the chance I had to do it, and I totally just botched it. And they're all throwing, you know, pieces of paper at me and yelling at me. And
Occasionally I'll die.
and then I was hooked, right? And then I was hooked from there.
But, you know, that's what's great about the game. You can, like, mess up and make the wrong decisions and have bad luck and things like that. You know, it's a ton of fun.
But that's, I think, what comes from bad rolls is the opportunity for good role play. And I think a lot of people that always want to, you know, power game and really just
Win.
Really, it tends to be, the win. Yeah, I want to win. I want to win a game I can't really win. It's like golf. I think then it kind of hurts, but yeah, if you can see a 1 and be like, okay, I can turn this into something cool, I'm gonna role play this out. Yeah, then it really turns into some good storytelling.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing that some players don't get, and other players just really they really own it. Like one of the I think it was the first game I ran at a convention. One of the pre-gens was a Dwarven Bard, and the lady that was playing that character would fail every like bardic knowledge check. But instead of just failing them and waiting for me to give information, she would just make up a story. That was completely wrong. It was, you know, and it was great. It just added to the narrative, it added to the role playing.
And I get it. Some people are better at it than others. Like, you know, as a DM, I still struggle with some of the dialogue and really like improvising some of those conversations. I think that's probably the more difficult part for me, rather than like running battles and fights. So I get like not everybody is an expert role player. Not everybody can pull that stuff off the cuff. But when you can, or when you've got someone in your group that can, man, it's great.
We play a collab game on Wednesday nights called Save or Dice. And like, so the last couple sessions, like we've been doing something goofy to come in. And last time they're like, let's all just do really bad English accents. And one of the players, Will, is English, so it's kind of funny. But I'm like, I just can't do an accent to save my life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's even worse. Like, I definitely can't do it on demand. That's for sure. Like when I role play, I can do voices. But if someone says, "Oh, show me the voice," I'm like, I like freeze up and I can't do it. But during the game, like I can get into the character and play the character.
Yep.
So yeah, you know, it's like circling back to what you said, it's different for everyone, and you know, it's just finding your comfort level and figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are.
And I found that, you know, through parenting, it's changed that too. Like my ability to improvise and do things has gotten much better. So I'm trying to bring that to the game when I can, and like kind of get into that mindset of, okay, now what? If I were in this situation, what would I do as a parent?
Well, just wait. That's going to get even better when your son becomes a true agent of chaos. And you really don't know. And it's like when we were having kids, it's like when you go with one kid, it's not bad. Like you got double coverage. When you get to 2, then you got to go man to man. It's still all right. You know, it's not too bad. You go beyond 2. Now you got to play zone defense. So it gets tougher.
Yep. Yeah, I watched my sister do that, and you know, it's nuts. It's just, I don't know how I think she actually started trying to turn the first one against the other 2 to like switch sides.
I've heard that. You know, you try and turn one of them into a boss, to a boss minion. You know, one of our partners has 5 kids. Yeah. And that's exactly what, you know, he talks about, is like one of them kind of takes charge and tries to help out. The only problem is like that has its own pitfalls, because then you have to like rein that one in, like they're trying to help, but maybe a
Hey,
little
you got a
bit
Dwight
too
Schrute
much.
on your hands, assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah. So it's definitely a thing. We are up on the hour mark, so I want to thank you for coming hanging out. I want to, invite everyone to go check out Dungeons and Diapers, the blog. There is a link in the description, as always. There's links always in the description. You can check those out. Thanks for hanging out with us, and until next time, stay nerdy.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Fun hanging out and talking about D&D.
Quite welcome.